Hi, this is Dave Kroll. This video assumes that you're already familiar with ExtendSim. Here we're going to focus on what's new since the release of ExtendSim 8. I'm not going to try to cover everything we've done, just the major features. A full list containing all of the new features can be found on our website, www.extendsim.com. Now I'm using ExtendSim 9.1, so if you're following along, you want to make sure that you are using that release as well. Let's begin with our new Smart Connections feature, and this is actually a whole group of features that work together to make it easier to build models. So like we've done all before, we begin with an executive and drop this into the model. And I'll drop in a create block. And this is where the fun stuff starts. So before we'd have to drag in, say, a queue if it followed the create block, and then connect that queue up. Now, if we right-click on the output connector of the create block, we'll get a list of the most commonly connected blocks to this connector. And what's nice about this feature is that if you connect, for example, something other than queues after your create blocks more often than anything else, then that block will move to the top of the list. So this is a dynamic list that's based upon your modeling style. So I'm going to drop in a queue after the create, and then after the queue we'll have an activity, and then after the activity we'll have an exit block. And you can see that's not quite so common, but it's still in the list of popular blocks here. Now let's say, okay, I've done my model, but I really wanted to add an information block between the activity and the exit block. So in the past I'd have to move the exit block over, delete the connection, drag the information block in, and reconnect it up. Now I can use the drag over connection feature and just drag that information block over those connectors, and it connects it up for me. Now another way to build models, if you still like dragging blocks in the library, is to use the bump connect feature. So in this case, I would pull my queue in and just bump it up against that output connector from the create block, and that attaches it for me. And I can do the same thing with the activity and again with the exit block. Now along with this, and as part of the Smart Connections feature set, we've also added auto route connections so that the connection lines are smarter about how they're rerouted. And an easy way to see this is just to move a block around. So if I take this queue and move it around, we can see that those connections are routed now, so it's much more aesthetically pleasing than it has been in the past. So that's the Smart Connections feature, and it makes modeling easier to do and makes the models more attractive. If you're using ExtendSim's rate library, one of the most significant new features are the flow attributes. These are properties or characteristics of the rate that is maintained as it moves through the system. Now I've opened one of the example models, flow attributes with tanks, and you can find this in the examples, discrete rate, flow creation, and attributes folder. Now in this example, we've got a base product that we're mixing with a flavor, and the flavor is orange, blue, green, or red. And every so often we're going to change our flavors. So in order to do this, we've got a create block that we're creating an item every 20 time units exponentially. And we're going to assign an attribute here randomly. So we've got a random number here. And this is going to set what flavor mixture we're going to create at that particular time. So we have a get block, and we're getting that particular SKU or flavor mix. Now that SKU is a named connection. It's going over to our demand connector, which is selecting one of our 5 flavors that we have in the tank block here. Now in our database, we have a table here, and for each particular SKU, we've got a different mix of flavors. For example, SKU 4 is all orange, and SKU 1 is 50% green and 50% blue. So we read this, the particular SKU off of the flow here, read that value from that same table we just looked at, and set the mixture into another database table, which is going to define our flavor mixture in the merge block here. So the different SKUs will have the different flavor mixture, and that'll be written over to the merge block, and it will pick the different mixture from our tanks holding each of the flavor additives. Then we mix a certain percentage, 90% is coming from our base product, and then 10% is from the additives there. We mix them together, we put them into a container, and we ship it out. Okay. And then here we've got a history block that's showing what we've mixed so far. So let's just clone that out so we can see what's going on here. Drag that down in size a bit. And if we watch this run, we'll see that we'll be changing our flow mixtures, and we can see up here we're looking at what we're currently producing. We've got flavor mixture up here, which is changing green right now. We'll see it change shortly again. Blue now, and the different SKUs that are being produced. The flow attributes can be used to record mixtures of products as they go through the system. It's extremely powerful and will make modeling quite a bit easier with Release 9 and beyond. If you're like most ExtendSim modelers and utilize the ExtendSim database, you may like the new Excel add-in. This allows you to manage and create ExtendSim databases within Excel. To utilize this, I'm going to import an existing database, and it'll actually be the database from the previous example we just saw on the flow attributes. And we're going to make some modifications to it. So when you add the database to ExtendSim, you'll get the database add-in to ExtendSim. You'll get an ExtendSim DB menu, and you can either create a database or import a database. In this case, we're going to import a database, and I will import flow attributes. So I've exported this database from ExtendSim, and the import is done. It says, do I want to do a consistency check? And I'll say yes. And it runs for a moment and checks the consistency of the database. Unfortunately, in this case, it says there are no errors. So each of the tables in that database are now in Excel. So I can see that the table name is called products. In this case, the one field is a string, and it's the list of products. Other tables are over here. So we've got other formats for those particular fields and the values of that database table. There's also, you can get at more details by clicking on the plus over here, and now I can get the index of the table, relationships if there are any, whether or not the axis is write only or read and write, and so on and so forth for all the properties of those particular tables and fields. So I'm going to add a new table, and I'm going to call this interarrival. And I'm going to set up a table where perhaps each product has a separate interarrival time. So I'm going to have two fields, one for the product and one for the interarrival time. And we'll see that it's added a new table over here for us. And our times will be a general format, but the product will be a string. So this will be the interarrival time. And then the product, so I'm just renaming the field here. Now the product is going to be a child field of the products table. So if I click on the field itself, I can go to Edit Parent-Child Relationships and say that my child table is my interarrival, my child field is the product, my parent table will be products, and my parent field will be the product. So now I've added a relationship here so that our new interarrival time table, its products field will be a child field of the products table. And we can see that here. Now I've got a list of my products, and I can actually drag down for all 5 products here. And my interarrival times, I might just say I have constant values of different interarrival times for my 5 products, or I can make them random variables. So in this case, I can make it an exponential distribution, maybe with a mean of 15. And maybe the next one I'll have an exponential distribution with a mean of 12. When I'm all done, I'll export the database, and then I can import that back into ExtendSim and work with it there. Now there's many more features I haven't talked about. We can append fields, remove fields, add new tabs, and just pretty much do almost everything we can do with the ExtendSim database in ExtendSim in Excel. So for people that like working in Excel, this is a very nice feature. One thing that's always been quite easy to do in ExtendSim is to import data from external data sources and export data to external data sources. In version 9 and 9.1, we've added some new features for this to make it even more powerful. I'm going to show three things here. One is the ability to wildcard or import and export to multiple worksheets at once in Excel. And then I'm going to show the new named range feature so that you can refer to a named range in Excel and import and export to that. And then I'm also going to briefly show the new ActiveX data objects feature for importing and exporting as well. In the wildcard feature, we can specify the table name and the worksheet name by typing them in the table name and worksheet name fields, and then adding an asterisk or a star to indicate that we're going to wildcard the remaining characters. So in this particular model, we have a database called wildcard tables, and we've got tables 1 through 10 here. And each table has a little different data in them. Table 10 goes from 10 to whatever here in the first field, and table 1 goes from 1 to whatever in the first field. So you can idea there's a little different data there. In the data import export block, I can simply say that I'm going to export or import, but in this case we set it up as export, from table star to worksheet star or sheet star. And if I bring up Excel, we can see that we've now got sheets 1 through 10 here. They're all empty. So let's just click on that export button. And then when we look at Excel, now we have all of our sheets 1 through 10 with the unique information from each table in each worksheet. The named range feature allows us to import and export to a specific named range in Excel, so that if the data moves or we change the dimensions of it, it will still adjust because it's a named range. We specify that we're going to use a particular worksheet. In this case, it's called My Ranges. So you can see our first 10 there from the wildcard. Now we've got My Ranges here. And then on the Options tab, I say I'm going to specify a named range. In this case, we've got two named ranges, dataset 1 and dataset 2. So if I say I'm going to import to dataset 1 and click on the import button, and we'll see this is where our named range table is here that we're importing to. We'll see that, click on the import button there. There we go. We'll see that it's imported that named range. If I change to a different named range, so I'm changing to dataset 2, and I import that, we'll see we've got different data. The ADO feature allows us to import from a variety of databases that support ADO. These include Access, MySQL, and SQL Server. And I would specify, in this case I'm using the same database wildcard tables. I pick the table in ExtendSim, and then I pick the table in Access. So if I click on here, I've got a temporary table that's generated by Access, but I'll just say table 1 here. And then I can export to that database, and it's going to give me a warning here saying the structure of the ExtendSim table and the ADO table don't match. If I say OK, what it's going to do is change or modify the ADO table so that or the table in Access, so that it matches the ExtendSim table. I'll say OK, and if I were to bring up my Access database here, we can see my table 1 looks exactly like the table 1 in ExtendSim here. So if I open up that table here, we can see the same numbers there. The next feature I'm going to talk about is item logging. This allows you to create a customized trace of the model, and it's recorded in the database. So you can choose which blocks and which information about the model you want recorded. So I'm going to open up an existing model, which I've got here in my recent files. You can find it in your examples discrete event statistics. This is the air freight model with item logging enabled. The numbers on the blocks, if you're not familiar with that, that's the block number. So that gives us a little more information about the model. And we've added an item log manager. Now this is in the item library. If I double click on the item log manager, we can go to the data collection tab and see which blocks are included. So we're including the two activities in the resource item block. We're leaving out the queue from the log. So you can choose from this list of blocks. Now, if it's a large model, you can use these filtering tools to choose which blocks you want in there by block type or block label or blocks in a specific hierarchical block. We can also specify which attributes we want to record in the log. So this first tab is the data collection. So this is the information that we're collecting. Now, on the log is actually the report. So it takes the information that we've collected and generates a log file report from that. So you can actually create multiple log file reports from the same data collection log itself. So we're going to put it in a database called item logs with a table called item log. And if it doesn't exist, it will create that table for you. We can look at the log here. In this case, we can see we've sorted it here by the plain ID and then by the entry time. And we can see for each 747 the time that it arrived and exited each block, and then again for the DC-10s the times that they arrive and exit each block. So this is a very powerful tool if you want to create a log of each thing that happens in the model and get a customizable report based on that. I'm going to use a variation on our electronics manufacturing model to show off a few more features. These will be the new detailed block profiling that's found in 9.1. This is not in 9, but it is in 9.1. The quantile and interval statistics and the mean and variance block, multi-component failure modeling, and new variable input connectors. So let's begin with detailed block profiling. This is now found in the real-timer block, which has existed for a long time. And this feature gives you more information about how long each block takes in the simulation. So we've always had a block profiling feature that shows how long each block takes, but that was just in a text file with limited information. This is a much more detailed version of that, and it also stores the block profile in the database. So you can sort it and kind of examine it and look at it, even export it to Excel if you wanted to, and view it and analyze it there. So I've added a real-timer block, and on the front tab it's about the same information here, but we've added this block profiling tab, and you can select a database and table to store the block profile in there. And I've run this across multiple runs, and it's recorded that about 15% of the simulation time was in the shutdown block, 12% in a discrete event plotter, 12% in the executive, and so on and so forth. And it's sorted by time here. We can see the block number, how much memory it was at the start of the simulation, the end of the simulation. So if the model gets big, you can tell where that might be occurring as well. I've also added more detailed information in the oven process, or extracted more detailed information by adding a couple of mean and variance blocks. One will be using the quantile statistics, the other one will be using interval statistics. Now, quantile means that I get a report of how much time, and I've run the model 10 times and record the utilization at the end of each run. And I'm seeing what percentage of the time the utilization was at or below the particular statistic here. So that's our quantile statistics. We can change these quantile numbers, values in here. So if I change this to 0.5, I can't change 0.5, let's change that to 0.4, for example. And it recalculates on the fly, giving us a new quantile value. The interval statistics, you may also notice we redesigned the interface to the mean and variance block. So we now have a new interval statistics option. This says every so many time units, it's going to capture that interval and then clear its statistics. And I've actually reported that out. We can see over 100 time unit intervals what the utilization was for this process. In the component placement, I've added a new failure block or shutdown block that uses the multiple component failure, and that's actually based on a database table. So I have a database table here which has an ID or identifier for each failure type, time between failures, time to repair, whatever value is when it's up and whatever value is when it's down. And we can also add more details to this. We can record the state of each component, whether or not it's up or down, and a match field. This would be used if we wanted to easily disable certain failure types on a particular table. So what we actually have are multiple kinds of failures occurring at once. And we can report this independently or dependently, so that when one failure occurs, then the other ones are reset, or in the case here, they're independent. Or we can also report each individual component, in which case we'll have one output connector per component, or an aggregate state, which is either the whole block is up or the whole block is down. And we've also added new variable input connectors. So for example, on the activity here, we can have any number of inputs to that activity. That just saves a few blocks. This behaves exactly the same way as a select item in merge mode. Now, that's not all the features we've added, and I do encourage you to go to our website, which is www.extendsim.com, and read about all the other features that are in version 9 and 9.1. These would include things like performance improvements, so new functions, some enhancements to the data tables, enhancements to the equation-based blocks, and a variety of other features. So again, this is Dave Kroll. I thank you for your time. Go to our website, again, www.extendsim.com, and you can learn more about the new version. Thank you.